The Spinoff Podcast Network.
K-pop to me means more than just listening to music. It's learning to be myself.
The Spinoff's new documentary, K-Pollies, follows 3 Pacific youth obsessed with K-pop. In a one-off documentary, see what they've found in Korean pop culture and how they bridge it with their own.
When you start dressing, looking different, everyone side-eyes you. But in K-pop, they're just like, no, like celebrate yourself.
Watch K-Pollies today at thespinoff.co.nz/videos. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is made by the Spinoff with help from Callaghan Innovation, New Zealand's innovation agency. Here's your host, Simon Pound.
You know how when you go to a big concert and afterwards you and every other person there all want an Uber at the same time, and you just kind of expect that you'll be able to call one up because surely they'll somehow know how to project the demand around this big event. But have you ever stopped to think how they might do this? And what if the event isn't as obvious as a massive show at a major venue? What if it's an obscure conference? And it isn't just Ubers. All kinds of companies need to be able to know when unexpected demand, or lack of demand, is going to shake their business. One local company is helping solve this through a clever mix of big data and human thinking. They are called PredictHQ, and they count Uber, huge airlines, and companies like Domino's among their customers. In fact, they help the pizza chain know how much dough they'll need to make the most dough. The company had a couple of huge turning points, with one founder uprooting his young family and setting up their San Francisco office to help land $15 million of venture funding and some of the world's biggest companies as clients. They keep a Kiwi heart, with most staff and all the clever data stuff happening here. That uprooted co-founder, who is also PredictHQ's CEO, Campbell Brown, joins us now on a trip back to Aotearoa to talk the journey, what's next, and how they got going. Kia ora, good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, so first up, this isn't your first rodeo, is it? Tell me about your experience at Online Republic, who not everyone may know of, but they were a hugely successful company in the kind of data space around bookings for camper vans and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I was coming out of another startup called Grab One that we had started back in 2010, and I met a guy called Mike Ballantyne, who at the time he's one of the co-founders of Online Republic, and started working there a day a week just to help him out, and then went to 3 days a week, and then he said, "Look, mate, can you join me full time and let's make a go at this business and see what we can do with it?" And it kind of made a lot of sense to me. I got along with Mike really well, kind of kindred spirits and whatnot. And then about 2 years later, we successfully sold the business to Webjet. But during that time, we spotted this trend that was happening, these peaks and troughs in demand that we really didn't know why. Why was it happening in Paris and London and San Francisco? And we were able to kind of triangulate it around these events. And I said to Mike, there's got to be a better way. We've got to be able to do this. And so we solved this problem internally, and eventually that led to us thinking, actually, we've got a business here. And so literally at the same time I was resigning from Online Republic in the office of the investor that we were signing our seed capital deal with on the same day. And as soon as that happened, we were kind of all guns blazing into PredictHQ.
And with kind of the the blessing and friendship of the online republic people? Because you've
totally.
taken a whole bunch of the crew with you, haven't you?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of them are shareholders. We set this business up and incubate it within Online Republic, and so, the likes of Rowan and Dimitri and Sue and Vaughan and they're all shareholders still in the business and are extremely supportive. We're just at Mike's birthday on Saturday, and look. In the early days, that it was great to have their support to get this thing going.
It's quite remarkable. Like, this was an insight that came out of trying to kind of get in the middle of people wanting to get car rentals or camper van rentals when they went to different cities. Hey,
100%. So we did two things that kind of proved our thesis. The first thing is we served up a little booking alert widget on our car rental website. And we told people why availability was low and pricing was high. So it was this educated urgency. And that little tweak on these search pages increased conversion by 35%. And so we were going, okay, there's something there. And then we also knew that the booking curve of, it was a state of origin in Brisbane, was 16 days. And so we tried out buying as many eyeballs 16 days out from the state of origin on people searching on airport rental car hire Brisbane and whatnot. And we were able to dominate market share in that particular space because we knew about the event coming up and when they were most likely to book. And those two catalysts for me were the biggest thing to go, look, there's something big here. And then it was, what shape and form is it going to take? Is it going to be a SaaS product? Is it going to be an API product? And I think our first stumble was we made it a SaaS product. And so very quickly we had to change to an API first business.
Tell me, let's jump back to where we were a second ago, but tell me, what's the difference between a SaaS business and an API first business?
Great question. So API, application programming interface, is a way in which businesses can integrate it into their own platform. So what we had is we were going and meeting with businesses and they're like, hey, we love what you're doing, but we want that intelligence in our own systems. We want it in our own forecast models. We don't want a platform to log into and to go search and discover these events. And so we very quickly saw that that was the way we needed to become, a category king. Even back in those days, we're thinking, how do we become a category king? And it's by playing and providing an agnostic technology that can plug into a revenue management system, that can plug into a demand forecast model that, in Uber's case, they've built an entire platform around it. And I think that it is a challenging way of doing it, but for us, it's a long game, and we knew that would be the best way of approaching this business.
So it's kind of like a big pipe full of all of your data that you just plug in, and then they can use that pipe to make whatever kind of stuff they want to out the other end, as opposed to concentrating on having something that's got every single report conceivable that they then log into and use on a desktop or something. Yeah,
it's just we saw this massive thing of people just getting sick of logging into another platform, and that works when you're a Salesforce, and that works when you're a Slack. But for us, we knew that people wanted to build data models around our data as well, and that for us is really, really sticky. Meaning you can't just unplug us and plug in something else, because we have built all this intelligence around real world events and at real scale. So when we went talk with airlines, they were sitting there, hey, how we get event visibility at the moment, we sit 5 people in a room and we search on Google. And there's no way of knowing if that's big or small. We miss thousands and thousands of events every single month, but we're using that data in our forecast models. And we just said, that's crazy.
That is bananas. So let's jump back to that first kind of the idea that got it going. So you worked out, so were you actually putting up little notifications on the page that said state of origin's happening in 16 days, it's going to be busy, book now?
Yeah, totally. So when people would search on Brisbane or they'd search on New York City, we would call our very, very basic MVP, minimum viable product of an API, and it would return the results to tell them what was actually happening in that area. So we A/B tested it to make sure that it was right, because it was a bit of a punt. But it all played out, and I think the other kind of byproduct of that as well was people were less likely to abandon the page, meaning they felt that urgency of booking.
Well, and they'll believe it because you jump online and there's 26 people are looking at this, and you're like, there aren't 26 people looking at this hotel room. You guys are having me on.
Yeah, and funnily enough, Booking.com is another customer of ours, and they're pretty aggressive in that space as well. But
it doesn't feel targeted, and it doesn't feel relevant, and it doesn't feel believable. Whereas I'm on to try and book for State of Origin. Oh, wow, lots of other people are. It even knows I am. Oh, shoot, I'd better move it.
And conversely, if you don't want to travel on that day and you're flexible, you can. You won't lose that individual. And so I think that context is really important, and that applies to, what we saw very early on in the travel space now is just exploding in the retail and the transport space. It's pretty crazy just how many businesses are impacted by events.
How did you? So events became the thing that you picked up. Was like these are the things that cause these surges in demand around things like rental cars in cities with people coming to get there, and then you extrapolated that out to go, well, actually, that event's going to affect everyone selling food or rostering staff on or wanting to get a car park.
Yeah, I mean, you just think about the event footprint, right? So, like, if you're going to travel to Sydney for watch All Blacks versus Australia, you got to book your accommodation, you've got to book your flight, you're going to spend more money on retail, you're going to clothing, cafes, bars, restaurants, rental cars, Ubers. The knock-on effect is massive. And even you look at travel insurance. And so we kind of sat back when we realised this, and we're like, this is massive, and no one's doing it. And we've been able to solve a problem in a real business and at scale. And then we started to get inbounded by some really, really big businesses who have been trying to solve this internally for years and years and years and just have never done it. And it massively moves the needle. So you're not talking like a 1 or 2% gain. You're talking massive amounts of money that they can, by being prepared, by having more inventory, by having more staff on board. Because then you start looking at labour optimization. How many staff do we need to have in this cafe or this pizza shop? And understanding that catalyst, understanding why at scale is super, super important.
Because I'll bet not all events are created equal. So, for example, the All Blacks playing in Sydney, big deal. The Warriors go to Sydney. Yep. There's not planes of people following the Warriors into Sydney.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things at play there. So the first thing that we uncover is the perfect storms of demand. So these are events that are smaller, but intersect on the same time, the same location, that you didn't have visibility before. That collectively, they have a massive impact on demand. So we're not just looking at these big events, we're looking at also these groupings or clusterings of events that are happening. And then this is kind of why we're moving into the space of things like aviation rank. And so what we do now is we ingest the world's international and domestic flight booking data. We fuse that with our event data to be able to rank events based on what triggers inbound, outbound. So if Kevin Hart is playing in San Francisco, there's 40,000 people attending it. Uber care about that. But British Airways don't. British Airways want to know about the medical conference that is down in San Jose that's attracting 20,000 people, and 75% of those people are inbounding internationally. And those nuances are big in terms of when we are being used in forecasting.
And I'll bet Uber want to know about the medical conference down the road, because you'd expect when Kevin Hart's on, it'll be at a stadium that's in a big place that everyone knows about. That conference could be in the back blocks of nowhere, and if suddenly 10,000 people need an Uber at the same time.
Yeah, true. I mean, and Uber is very much about is there going to be a lot of people needing a ride in one particular location at any given time? And so they've got a broader one, whereas the airlines are very specific on inbound, outbound. And then you've got the likes of some of our accommodation partners who care about not just the event, but actually how close is that to our asset? Because if there's a 100,000 person event that is 20 kilometres from our hotel, we care about that, but we also care about that 1,000 person event that is only 20 metres from our hotel. And those things, this is why we've had to build and do a lot of feature engineering within our API. So if it was just a raw data feed, that's something that we've never really been interested in, is building that intelligence and that capability that allow these people to understand and get these answers is kind of critical to us now and in the future, and as we build out our capability around correlation and prediction.
So you landed on this concept of events, and then you thought, look, it's bigger than just rental car; it's the whole industry. How do you go about building up your data set so it is meaningful, so you are able to then have, relevant scores that you can give things if they're within proximity or if they're kind of a certain number of people? Because there's a lot of little conferences and there's a lot of cities and there's a lot of change.
Yeah, you got to spend quite a bit of money to basically build out an event pipeline that can that can ingest information and that can actually clean it as well. So we spend a lot of time building up this data set, and it is a painful process. But we've now got this platform that can ingest millions and millions of pieces of information and clean it on the fly. Meaning, some of the data partners that we bring in, like ticketing platforms or sport data providers, they've got a 40 to 50% error rate on their data, meaning it's incorrect geocode or location, or it's spam, or it's a duplicate. We're cleaning all that up using machine learning as a way in which we can do that at scale, and it's kind of the unsexiest part of our business. And we've spent a lot of money just to get a clean data set that we can then enrich and provide intelligence on top of that.
And do your deals with your customers, so you've got the Ubers, you've got the Dominos, you've got Booking.coms, they're pretty big customers. Do they mean that you're able to pull their information into the whole and then it makes the whole system richer?
Yeah, I mean, there's elements of what we're doing in the future that absolutely that's what we're doing. I think first and foremost, though, it's enabling them to improve their forecasting. So that means that we're kind of supercharging what they are already doing and answering the why around some of their booking and transactional information. And, where we see a big growth in our business is actually better assisting them in correlation. So helping them correlate events to demand. And so that's where we're pushing next year, is building a lot of our capability around how can we help you find that correlation within, rather than months and minutes. And then how can we help you scale that?
Sorry about that. It's Alex Casey from The Real Pod here.
And this is Duncan from The Real Pod. We're here to tell you that as well as enjoying this podcast, you should also listen to ours.
It's a reality television and real life in New Zealand podcast recorded every week. It's relevant.
It's not relevant. That's crazy.
It's real. It's raw.
It's three mates having a nice time and talking about the television.
If you like popular culture, if you like celebrities, if you like reality TV, or even if you hate it all, have a listen. You might be surprised.
Yeah, definitely if you hate it all.
If you hate us,
well,
lots of ammo.
It might be an issue.
Lots of ammo.
The spinoff.co.nz, search Real Pod, you might have a nice time.
Maybe.
If you love the Spinoff, the best way to show it is to become part of the Spinoff members. This is the fund that helps us keep free and accessible to all without a paywall. It also funds some of our most important and acclaimed journalism. You can pay what you want, but for just $8 a month, you'll receive a package that includes our first book. Check it out through the Spinoff. So let's go back a little bit to when you were getting this idea off the ground, right? It's really cool to kind of understand a little bit about, it's really cool to go, people who in the past would have gone, holy shit, either the store is full or empty, what do I do now? Now have some kind of idea how to plan and kind of work to demand. It's a really cool idea, but how do you go from, an office in Auckland, New Zealand, to getting the cash that's required to actually get that off the ground with so much kind of to build ahead of proving it? And then how do you go about landing companies like that as customers?
Yeah, I mean, initially it's all about calling in favours, big borrow steal, using your own capital to get things off the ground. Working with government agencies like Callaghan have been kind of really fundamental to the success of our business. And then I guess when you look at it is, when you have that feeling in the pit of your stomach that this is going to be bigger than anything I've been involved in, is just having that determination to get people involved in the business and build a really, really good team around you, which sometimes can be challenging when you've got an idea and a couple of dollars to rub together. But we're just lucky enough that we had individuals and that believed in what we're doing from kind of day one.
You had a strong track record and you picked up a great series of co-founders and investors out of Online Republic.
Yeah.
But it's still a big kind of bet, isn't it, to then build out the technology to make it work?
Yeah, it is. It is, and I think I meet with founders now, and I think they're looking for me to give them the magic answer of whether they should do the idea or not. I don't think you're ever going to fully know 100% if you're going to be able to do the idea. But if you got that feeling in your stomach and it doesn't leave you, and you keep on seeing these patterns of it's going to work, you just got to go for it, and you'll land on it, and you'll grow that idea. And look, we were just lucky that we also had a mentality that we knew what things like organic search could do for our business, and that's how we were lucky enough to create this content that then attracted the likes of Uber and Booking.com. So they inbounded to us. We didn't have to go looking for them. But, yeah.
How did you do that? Because you were kind of in stealth mode, weren't you, at the very beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we're in stealth mode so far, and the fact is that we didn't really go looking for publicity. What we were doing is we were building something that we knew was very important, but we also wanted to attract the right customer, so we focused on content. So I remember traveling home and I was listening to a guy actually from a business called Zapier, and they built a landing page for every single API connection that they built. And that triggered a thought in my mind is that we could do the same thing for businesses. So we set out and created a landing page for local event API because we knew people wanted to search for a local event API. And we ended up building about 56 different landing pages, and that was enough to go and attract the likes of the engineering team at Uber who were searching on local events API. And so we're able to get really, really qualified traffic in early. And that was a really big kickstart for our business.
That's a really cool idea, in the same kind of way that, a few years ago there were some advertising case studies around some people trying to get jobs, and they did it around kind of auto-Googling. So they did AdWords campaigns around the names of famous creative directors. So when they Googled themselves, it said, hey, give me a job.
That's really smart. Jeepers.
Yeah, really smart.
Yes, it is. I mean, look, you got to get creative when you're trying to build a global business. And I think we've always done things a little bit differently, and we're not afraid to continue to do so as well. And I still remember the day when Rob, my co-founder, and I were sat in the office in Uber in San Francisco, and we had these engineers sitting there going, look, we've been trying to solve this for 6 months and we can't get anywhere. We just want to get back to doing what we do best. And that's when we really were like, jeepers, this is massive. And then Booking.com came on board, and some other really, really big accommodation players as well. So you just got to kind of hold on and ride it out and try and make sure the customers are really, really happy in what we're providing.
Tell me about those first meetings to get that on board. So Uber gets in contact and says, this is cool. And then you're like, oh, yeah, we're just down the road. And then what, jump on a plane immediately?
Yeah. I think it's the naivety of Kiwis sometimes is also a really good trait, because you just don't know really what you're getting yourself in for. And I think Kiwis can go into things and go like, we're just going to go in there extremely confident and back ourselves. And I remember Mark, who is Mark, the guy who signed the first deal at Uber, him and I are still friends today. So 3 years on, and it's just one of those things, mate. You walk into these meetings and you've got to back yourself, and you've got to understand and try and make them feel comfortable that we're going to provide the value that they need. And it is pretty daunting, but jeepers, man, like you just got to do it.
And did you have a working prototype? Could you say to them, plug in kind of like San Jose tomorrow afternoon, and we'll tell you if there's anything that's going to mean that there should be more cars in a certain place?
Totally. Yep, absolutely. And you needed to have that. And look, it's nowhere near as intelligent as it is today. But I think what we had in the likes of Uber is someone that was willing to work with us, because we were solving a problem for them that it wasn't their core capability. And it's far more complex than you actually appreciate, because events are really dynamic. They're not like just a normal location data set that is static. They are changing all the time. You've got new events being announced. You've got some being cancelled. You've got some changing location. And this dynamic nature of events makes it really, really hard to kind of pin down.
Oh, and a bunch of them move all the time. So, even if you've got the dentist conference locked down, it'll go from Hawaii to Wisconsin to Alaska.
Yeah, totally. And so we've built these features within our API that allow you to track these. So we call them recurring events. So no matter where they occur anywhere in the world, if you've associated that to your demand, you can follow that demand where they go. And the other thing you've got to remember is that, like Dreamforce, last year it started in September. This year it started in October. That's a month shift in demand. Your demand models, if you're using no context, are just going, hey, in September you're going to see a boatload of demand in San Francisco. That demand's actually shifted to October. And so again, this whole context that we're bringing allow businesses to really supercharge their demand forecasting.
And early on, you made the call to up sticks and go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Tell me about that decision.
I think it was a bit of a surreal decision. I think I had convinced myself, and then I started internally. I convinced myself, and then I started talking externally to my wife and my friends, and then it was like by the time I was like, "Holy shit, what are we doing?" It was we were on the plane on was it NZ8 over to San Francisco, but I don't regret it for a second. It was the best move we've made in this business.
And that was so. Tell me about the time there. Did you have customers? Did you have revenue? Like, was it just like we've got to have someone there? I'm the CEO. Looks like it's us. Oh, hey, love, us and our small young family are going to go.
Yeah, we had very little revenue. We had Uber as a customer, but it was challenging. My wife is really amazing. She, just backed me, 120%. She was all up for the adventure. We had 2 young boys at the time. They were, when we moved, 4 and 2, and then we've just had a new baby daughter about a year ago now, jeepers. But it was really challenging, mate. But I guess the key thing there is nothing is ever easy, and it's very cliche. But I knew that it was going to be tough, and I knew that it would be challenging. But ultimately, we would find out if we truly had a big business or not. And that is the best place to test. I love New Zealand, but for what we were trying to do, it was too small. And we needed to be where our customers were, and we needed to be where our investors were going to be, and that needed to be me. And it couldn't have been someone else in the business. And so, the first 6 months of us being in the US was really rough. We had no credit score. We got kicked out of our flat because they wanted to sell it, in the first kind of 2 months, and we were bouncing around, and the kids weren't settled. But then we found our rhythm, and we started to find the people that would help us out, and we're now, we've got that rhythm now, and we're really happy, and we've got some amazing people supporting us over there, as well as our Australian investors as well.
And here in New Zealand, you've kept, so your technical co-founder is here.
Yes.
And you've got 50 odd people here doing the data science, the machine learning, the hard bits of the software and engineering are still all done out of New Zealand with the R&D.
Yeah.
And it's you and go-to-market team who are based out of San Francisco.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got some really talented people in New Zealand. I think we have a really unique way of working down in New Zealand from a technical standpoint, and I think that's something that we've looked to amplify. We've got some amazing talented people in the business and from all around the world that, because New Zealand's an attractive place to come and live, and we've kind of embraced that. And then in terms of the US, the way we talk about it is that we're trying to fuse the empathetic views of and way that Kiwis work with the kind of ambition of the US culture, and that seems to be working really, really well. And we're sharing that across those offices. But it's you got to take a breath sometimes, because it's been a crazy ride so far.
Tell me about that cultural difference. Having done a bit of work over that divide, it's kind of like a complete different way of thinking when you've got to think about global scale. When you've come from a place like New Zealand, where you've got to kind of do everything for everyone, and you can't be in a niche, and you got to you got to say yes and find a way to then get into that kind of like international scale and focus and ambition.
Yeah, the great thing about working with the team in the US is they've seen true scale. and they've worked for businesses like Okta and LinkedIn and Medallia, and that is exciting because their ambition it knows no bounds, and that's infectious. And the way in which they approach problem solving is just awesome. And I think that at the same time they also appreciate what we're building back in New Zealand, and we often send back Americans back to the New Zealand office and vice versa. And we've just got this really lovely thing going now where when people come back here, they take them out for dinner, and when we go over there, they take them out for dinner and drinks, and they're sharing and caring, and that is a big part of it. But yeah, I mean, look, it's we're getting the best of both worlds, and I think that the world is changing the way in which you can run a business. And even when we're raising capital, people were like, "Oh, I don't know if I believe in having technical staff back in New Zealand." And we're like, we get like a much longer tenure out of people in New Zealand than you would in the Valley. You've got people bouncing around, engineers bouncing around in the Valley every 12 months.
Yeah, with the lure of stock options and this, that, and the other, and
it's just
not the competition here, or more of a loyal culture.
No, I just think it's people are searching for that logo in the Valley, and there's so many logos over there. We're over here, we're focused on building a really, really amazing business locally, and I think that is a really attractive thing for people to be involved in, and we're kind of there's not that many businesses kind of taking on the world from New Zealand. And so that is a really, really unique thing to be involved with. And people joining our business are getting to, engage with the likes of your Ubers, your Booking.coms, your Bird Scooters, all sorts of different businesses that we now call customers.
Tell me about the role of culture in there, because I was having a little bit of a look around, and on your About page, you've got your company values up there, and one of them is about family, which feels like it's very 2019, but I understand it's been there from the start.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's really personal for myself and Rob. I've been through situations where I was working in London, and my boss at the time, I had a situation I needed to be back in New Zealand. She said, "Look, you go back, you sort it out. You don't even care about what happens here." And I think, it was those moments where you go, that needs to be part of whatever I build in the future. And you get these people joining now, and we're just very, very upfront about it. Even this morning we had one of our staff, his friend was involved in a car accident, so we just say, "Hey, look, you don't even think about work. You sort it out. What help do you need? What support do you need?" And I think that's really important, and it's just being human. And I think people over correlate on you've got to have all these plans in place around culture, but the key thing is to remain human. It's the little things that mean a lot to these people, and I think if it's personal, it comes from the heart in terms of why we've implemented it, then it's not cliche. And we've had to do this time and time again, and that support for these people is critical. And I want them to know, right, that don't put business first, put your family and friends first. I certainly do. I put my kids first all the time. I put my wife first, and I think that's important. And yes, we work sometimes weird hours, but end of the day, people will be happier if they have that well-being and that knowledge that their family and friends are happy and healthy as well, and themselves as well.
And that kind of individual character thing, I saw something around how you managed to stand out at aviation conferences.
Yeah.
Talk me through the attire strategy at an aviation conference.
Yeah, look, I think you got to lead from the front, and so that means that myself and my COO Richard have been in many occasions where we've worn these pretty ludicrous suits, and the main reason is we want people to come talk to us, so we don't want to have to walk around the room and talk to all these airlines and try and convince them, they should be talking to us as they were coming to us. And they were talking to us about, first and foremost, why do you look like such a muppet? and then secondly is, what do you guys do? And then we tell them, they're like, oh, wow, that's great. And I think that kind of Kiwi attitude is something that, we're just not afraid to do. And I think our very first suit now, we've got encased in glass in our boardroom in New Zealand with a little sign saying break in case of emergency. It's a R2-D2 suit that now is actually a collectible item because Disney sued the suit company that made it. And so we're getting one put in New Zealand in the US as well. But again, it's just that Kiwi attitude. We're all a bit quirky, but ultimately it's to make sure the business is moving forward.
And standing out in a sea of sameness, those conferences.
Yeah.
they're all older white guys. They're all bald. They've all got glasses, and they're all in the same suits, and all it can feel like you're in a kind of like copy and paste environment.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, when we turned up, it is pretty crazy. Like people just look and you go, "What are you doing?" But again, if I can't expect my staff to do it if I don't do it as well, and so I've got to embrace it, and look, it's just a great way of cutting through to these people as well.
And moving to San Francisco worked because
Yes.
you got into the networks where that first kind of couple of million of funding, then you managed to land a really significant kind of 15 million New Zealand round after that.
Yeah. I mean, it was a crazy process, but I was a lot of people said it couldn't be done, and because I wasn't known in the Valley, we were a Kiwi business, and that kind of just pushes me harder and faster. And we were just lucky that we had some people that understood our vision. And, I remember it was probably my darkest moment, but probably the best moment that came out of it is we had been to a partnership meeting. So partnership meeting is when investment company will say, yep, we're either in or out. And it was a firm that I really wanted to be part of our business, and they said no. And they said no. One of the reasons was because we had an HQ in New Zealand, which I was not changing. I'm a Kiwi. I want New Zealand to do well, and that's not changing. There's a lot of benefits having our HQ and R&D here in New Zealand. And then about 2 days later, a friend of mine, Jeff, called me up and goes, "Hey mate, can you come and present to my class at Stanford?" And I said, "Look, Jeff, man, I'm just broken, mate. I can't do it." And he goes, "No." And so I hung up. As soon as I hung up, I felt really bad, and there's this weird feeling. And I called him back and said, "Look, Jeff, I'll do it." And he goes, "Great." He didn't tell me what it was, and so what it was, bearing in mind I'm broken, I've done 60 VC meetings already. Walk into the class, and it was 3 investors sitting in front of me with a class of about 50 MBA students, and I had to pitch our pitch, and they would tear me to shreds in front of all the MBA students as a way of saying, "Hey, this is how, this is crap, this is great," and whatnot. But
This is why 60 people said no.
Yeah,
I bet that's a pretty brave environment to walk into.
It's just a weird environment. And then, but Teresa happened to be one of the people on the thing, and she just came up to me afterwards. She goes, "Right," and by this stage, my pitch.
Who's that, Teresa? Sorry,
Teresa Gao. She's a force of nature and an amazing investor in the Valley, ex-Axel, and has got her own firm now called A Crew, and she's just a sensational individual, and was very, very lucky to meet her. But she said, "Look, you need to get in my car now. I've called ahead to our partnership, and everyone's going to be there, and you're going to pitch to our partnership." And 3-4 days later, because we had other offers on the table, but she said, "No, you're going to do it with me." And I said, "No. And she goes, "No, you are." And she's very convincing, because I didn't really know who she was. And then I found out who she was and did DD on her, and I was like, "Oh." Holy shit, why was I saying that to her? And
one of the most powerful investors in the Valley. Excel being tier 1.
And that's that Kiwi naivety, I guess, that kind of makes it a bit genuine. But in the end, she was amazing. And then Lightspeed Venture Partners then inbounded to us, and I told Teresa about it, and she goes, "Yeah, we get those guys in to co-invest with us." And so I went and met Arif Jan Muhammad, who did not want to meet me. He was like, "Oh, I can't be bothered meeting this dude." So he had me pegged in for like 15 minutes to meet him, and we ended up staying and talking for an hour and a half. And then I came back in about a week later and pitched to him and his partner, Jeremy. He's an Australian, and they just got up and walked out. And I was like, "Well, I guess the pitch is over." So I walked out to the car park, and then I heard someone yelling my name, and it was Arif, and he goes, "Mate, where are you going?" I said, "Well, I thought you guys left." He goes, No, we're just about talking what offer we're going to make you." And then, so he shook my hand in the car park of Lightspeed, and so in the space of kind of 2 or 3 weeks, we'd closed, A Crew and Lightspeed, and it was just one of those things, because you've got to put yourself out there, and your pitch gets better over time. Like my first pitch was freaking horrendous. Like it was diabolical, but you get better and better and better, and then you're able to articulate just what you're trying to build, how big the market is, who your customers are, how you're going to grow revenue, how you're going to expand contracts, and it's a process, but you've got to be open to it.
And along that time, you're also onboarding and meeting new clients, and you've got some good names on the roster.
Yeah.
But it must be hard. You
it's hard.
You're in San Francisco. You're with your family, but you're like isolated from all your normal support networks and usualness. And then you're going to a bunch of strangers, and 60 of them are saying no to you with something that you're pretty sure is working. Must be a real. And then even when it is working, you don't necessarily know it because you're walking out of meetings.
Yeah.
What an amazing process. But from the outside, people just go, oh, look at all that money they raised. They're doing pretty well.
Yeah, that's easy. No, I mean, look, it was brutal. I mean, my wife was, at the time, 5 months pregnant. We were within a day of getting kicked out of the country because they declined the extension of our L1A visa. So within like 9 days, we had to reapply for an L1B visa. It was a pretty dark time, but I guess at the same time, it's just that determination to keep going. And when people say you can't do it, you just keep moving. And I think, I remember my wife coming in, and I was it was after this partnership meeting where they said no, and I was just ashen, lying on the couch, like I kind of didn't know where to go. But I think you take your time, you breathe, you wake up in the morning, and you're like, you know what, we've still got options, we've still got great people that want to invest in the business. And you keep going. You open yourself up to these opportunities. And I was just lucky enough to go along and meet Teresa and then meet Arif, and they both are amazing partners in our business. And people say luck, but I think you make your own luck because you put yourself out there, and you're willing to be beaten up and then get back up and go do it again. Because I'd have like 3 meetings in a day, and you'd have a great meeting in the morning, a shit meeting at about in the afternoon, and then you got to back up for another one, and you just got to keep going and going and going and going. And I think just what I do, my trick when I was doing it is try to stay as physically fit as I could. I stopped drinking alcohol for the whole time we're raising capital, and those kind of key little things to make sure that I was clear of mind when I was doing it. So if we did have dark times, I could punch through it. It's kind of the key thing.
And I suppose that you need that funding because you are building ahead of demand if you're making something that's never existed before. And having pulled that in, and now you've gone out with Aviation Rank, which is like a special product for the aviation industry to be able to forecast demand for them. What other stuff have you got cooking?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of alluded this before. Is we're in the process now of really building out a correlation and prediction engine. And so, we've built this API, a really, really clean data stream of event data. We've built a lot of intelligence on it, like local rank, aviation rank. And now we're building out this correlation prediction engine so that we can correlate our events to customers' demand and then help predict what's going to impact them in the future as well. And that was always kind of the premise behind our business from day one, except we went the wrong way around it. And so we've built out all the foundations that we wanted to, and now we're moving to that next stage of growth and deploying our capital in a way that is going to capture that as well. And it's listening to our customers. Our customers have fed back to us. We just had Pete, one of our head of product over in the US, interviewing a lot of our customers around this next journey, and we've had outstanding feedback about it. And that is just really reassuring that we're not only listening and providing this, but the customers are all in on it, and they want to be part of it, and they want to partner with us for it. So it's a pretty special time at the moment.
And having kind of had the success, got these great names on board and got these great customers, and how do you define success? Like, what will make you feel like you've given it a good nudge?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I think Campbell, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, would have placed it largely on monetary, and I think that's actually the wrong way of looking at it. Is have we created a business where we've got people that are having a blast doing it, that they're supporting their own family, that people are able to enjoy what they're doing. We've got happy customers. We are putting New Zealand on the map. So I don't think it's one thing. I think it's many. But I think the key thing I've learned to be over the past few years is a lot more self-aware. And I think with that comes that reality that the only thing you can't buy is time. And so what you want to make sure that everyone is involved in the business is they're enjoying their time in the business as well. And I think that comes with that is success to me. Is we're on the same journey, we're doing the same thing, we're achieving the same goals. And look, a byproduct is you might get monetary value out of that. But I think if you kind of rotate towards that, you won't. I don't think you're going to push yourself as hard. And it's I think it's just you just learn as you go. But don't get me wrong, mate. Like we are, we're just so bloody determined to make this a really kick-ass business, and that is the number one thing we're focused on. And we're not focused on, I think a lot of people focus on building a business to be sold. That's just not the way we're looking at it. We're building a really, really kick-ass business, and the byproduct of that is you become very attractive. And so that's just what we're focused on at the moment.
Well, thank you. I can't wait to see what happens next. Thank you for coming and sharing your
welcome.
story today. That's Campbell Brown, the CEO and co-founder at PredictHQ.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much to Tina Tiller for producing, and thank you very much for having us along and listening. If you've enjoyed today's chat, please do tell a friend and jump on board and give us a rating or review on iTunes. Cheers. If you are a fan and follower of the Spinoff, make sure you check out the Spinoff Members, a program where you're able to get behind and support and choose and shape the investigative journalism that the Spinoff provides.
You've been listening to Business is Boring, presented by Simon Pound, and brought to you by the Spinoff and Callaghan Innovation.
From the Spinoff Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz. Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tamaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today. The Spinoff Podcast Network.